I think even before going into the class, I love our program, kind of reflecting from December a year ago till now. Man, really strong foundational. I think culture precedes performance. I love the alignment. I love the direction. I see progress. Man, lots of reasons for hope, optimism, and belief in still another meaningful game to play, which is really gratifying. I think the players on our team reflect our values at a really high level. I think they fit here in Logan and in the community. And I think they foundationally are giving us a really nice basis to launch from. And so with that kind of backstory or backdrop, then it's okay, who do we add, right? And what direction do we go? So not only the cultural continuation, but then as you add people, right? And the people, if you think about Good to Great, the book that was written, it's one of the foundational books that I first read when I became a head coach. It's who first, then what. Even though I talked about the culture, that didn't talk about the strategy. So the who part of it really brings the other parts to life. And you've heard probably a million times, that's an exaggeration of coaches saying, right, recruiting is the lifeblood of any program, really of any organization. So the who is really important. The selection and assessment process, critical to any organization's improvement or sustainment. But also then the principles the players are selected on, right? How clear are you with what are you selecting? So it can just simply be height, weight, speed, size, strength, or the metrics for each position, which has to be part of it. But to me, there's a character component, there's a grit and resilience component, and there's a cultural component that also has to be part of it for a player to thrive in our program, but also to add value in moving the program forward. So this class, we selected and assessed not only on the physical capabilities, but from the book Angela Duckworth called Grit, she actually had quite a bit of success in predicting the success of young people with a grit scale or a grit score, meaning that there was another predictor. By the way, West Point had a similar experience. Besides just test score or GPA, there was a resiliency component that was predicting likelihood of success with young people. And so our process, now that we've had a chance to do it for a year, is very thorough and probably more comprehensive than most in terms of what's being valued. So not only the physical attributes and the position needs of players, but also the, I would say maybe the aptitude and characteristics they have and attributes matter in addition. So that comes together in a composite that helps frame our program, knowing that, right, this program will be high school based and primarily Utah focused in terms of high school based, then regional, meaning area specific. And the reason I would say that is through my years I've done a study, and we found really that the players that had the best experience, just as I did exit interviews at the end and collecting data points, they were usually within a 5-hour or a 6-hour driving distance or a single plane flight. And so, yes, playing on the field mattered. Their family seeing them play mattered. And so then the proximity became relevant. So again, Utah high school players, critical and essential and the priority for our program. Regional then becomes next most important. Now again, I'm talking high school because of the years of experience and what the data has said in terms of the value of experience they've had. And so this becomes a foundational class, just as the class we inherited and added to a year ago. So we'll continue to build the program through high school focused recruiting while navigating portal player additions to function at the highest level that's needed to compete and gain momentum and generate enthusiasm about the program. But really the sustainment is going to come from the high school cycles, while the portal then hopefully will dwindle less for us over time, right, while it takes time to develop high school players, which usually is at least a 2 or 3 year process. No one gives a head coach, right, 2 or 3 years to then show, right, improvement. So we're developing like crazy. We're making the changes necessary to compete at an even higher level each year portal-wise. And eventually the portal diminishes and the high school players continue then to take over is the goal. Then you have to retain the ones you have, right? And otherwise the portal kind of keeps going the same. And so that's kind of the landscape, and that's our approach. I feel really good about what we've done and who we've added. 17 new players. One of the 17, by the way, will be arriving next January. And so he had an injury that delayed his enrollment by 1 semester. But the other 16, some are going on missions first, others arriving mid-year. So there's kind of a mix within that. But I like the number of players we're adding. I like who we're adding as people. I like the physical attributes and skills. I like addressing the position needs because, again, the position needs are also in relation to succession planning. So it can just be you put a one-year roster together and plan to do it again the next year. I much prefer to have at a certain position a succession plan of here's the senior, here's a junior, maybe here's 2 sophomores, here's the freshman, here's the player redshirting, and a healthy roster that way. Many think that's not relevant any longer in college football because of the transfer work. I still think it's relevant. And so I think with the younger players we've added in a developmental nature, we're adding them to positions that make those positions pretty healthy, kind of from the ground up. So if you haven't met yet, this is Evan Butts. Evan played for me at the University of Virginia. Evan is our Director of Player Personnel, and so I'm going to take some of your questions, and then after that, I'm going to give Evan a chance to kind of from his seat, which is really, he's the one that coordinates all of this. And so Evan and our personnel staff are really behind the scenes, but making so many, doing so much of the work. And the intricacies of, I thought would be really helpful for you to hear from how that's working, not from the head coach's seat only, but from really the player personnel. And I've invited Evan to speak on my radio show tonight as well for the same reason, right, is to give a different lens from a different seat that really is controlling most of that process. So glad to take questions after that lengthy, that's a world record opening statement.
7 minutes.
7 minutes. I think that's the most I've ever done. So I don't know if I'll ever do that again, but there it was. 7 minutes for the first signing class. That's probably appropriate, and we'll go down from there.
It was awesome. You addressed a lot of the questions.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so, well, I'll start with, you talked about proximity. 7 in this class are within a 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
I mean, you got 2 right here in the backyard
Yep.
of this institution. I know you've only been doing this for really a year for the high school students, but how is that message resonating with those within the state or within that 2-hour drive? Because you got one up in Idaho Falls.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense. So most of these kids that are interested, their high school coaches or their parents are familiar with the type of program I run, how it's being run, and the success that it's had. And so there really hasn't been anything other than a draw in terms of the interest in that. Then when you add proximity to that just it's doubling down on the desirability of it, which for me and for I'd say the families and the young people, and again starting in Utah is the foundation, starting in the Valley is the foundation before the foundation, right? And so I think it's amazing to be a hometown player, especially when you get to go to college and play football. If it's Idaho Falls, awesome. Salt Lake City, amazing. Utah County, even if you go to St. George or go to the edges, that's still totally doable. And then it becomes a family experience. Not that it wouldn't otherwise, it just takes more time, energy, and resources to get to the games. And I think it matters more to a lot of players from their state when they're playing for the state school. And so was it intentional? Oh, yeah. Was there any compromise made in terms of ability because of proximity? That can't happen, right? And so the ability component and threshold has to be met. And, man, if that happens in your own state, in your own town, in your own region, man, that has to happen. Problems can happen when you compromise the ability standard for the proximity. That's when programs can kind of lose their way on a competitive advantage. And so those are hard decisions sometimes, and sometimes high school coaches and parents don't want to hear that. But yet that has to happen in the world of business or anything. And so, but man, anytime both of those can be met, that's a great thing for everybody.
Coach Mendenhall, Jason Turner from
Yep.
the Herald Journal. Just wanted to ask you specifically about the 2 kids from the Valley, kids that have been playing varsity football. I mean, Easton Hammond was a 4-year starter. Luke was a 3-year starter. Easton Hammond threw a no-hitter in varsity baseball as a freshman. These are kids that have, been involved in varsity athletics for a while. What about their skill sets and just about them throughout the recruiting process really resonated with you?
Yeah, different. Both have their own stories. As you just mentioned a lot about Easton, man, mindset is, it just drips off of Easton. The aggression, the competitive spirit, with the ability, and a really polished player at a young age is super appealing for us, and at the position he's going to play. So much of not only the physical attributes, which we already are really encouraged by what he has, but the mindset is just, man, it's the equivalent of a first-year player that's maybe already been in your program a couple of years, which is a huge advantage. And then in terms of Luke, now you think a little bit more developmental by body type. So same thing, love the mindset, competitive spirit, but now you see a different frame with a slightly different timetable as there's development that's going to fill out that frame. I love the idea of possibly, I don't know, 2 years from now, and we're in the Pac-12, and opponents are looking at our offensive front and saying, where, how? And here's the length and the size and the strength and it's like, how did that happen? And they might be coming off of missions. So the offensive front perspective, yes, we'll be in the portal, and we need to in the short term, but eventually you just see helmets lined up across at the same height, length, and the lean bodies and the physical presence with the same mindset. And so in Luke's case, that's, yeah, we see that.
Coach Jason Walker with Cache Valley Daily. I was thinking of a quote from Matt Painter, the Purdue head coach, where they're talking about freshmen. He's like, it's great if you can keep them. And I guess, how do you try
Great
to
point.
maximize this recruiting and this development, knowing that obviously the portal is?
It's the exact right question. And so it's not only how do you keep them, but how long can you keep them, right? And the better that we do, the more tampering will happen. And so a lot of times then it becomes an additional year. Our relationships, our culture, our success will then possibly hold a player an additional year. It might not hold them for all 5, but an additional year. So let's say they have a breakout year, whatever year they contribute. Could be their first year, could be their second. Stay one more is, I think, right, a reasonable goal for a lot of programs. And that would be even schools that maybe at the A4 level where they have a breakout year and possibly there's a financial difference between what they think they're worth in their current school, and so they market themselves. And so it's not just a Utah State issue, this is a college football issue. Relationships, culture, investment in, and I think our team just knows, I mean, we just pour into them, not only by our care of them, but by their development, the volume of snaps, the style of play, how hard we want them to play, all that's doing is adding more value. That increases their potential value. And we specialize in the development of people. And so, man, I would caution anyone to leave that too early. And so, again, maybe to your question, and the blunt fact is it might not be through graduation, but it could be an additional year. If it's 2 additional years, great. So that really becomes some of the byproduct of not only the what you do, but the how you do it. To the other example that you gave, Purdue's or who was it? Purdue's?
Matt.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah.
Coach Mark Green with Utah Statesman. You kind of mentioned assessing both, obviously the physical and performance element, but then also the mental, who they are, the character, things that fit the program. With kind of limited ability to meet with them and really have them in your program, how are you able to best assess
Yeah.
kind of that character?
So Evan will talk about that too, the number of exposures from times they visit our grounds. We learn a lot by the number of times a family's willing to get in the car and come see us. And we kind of assess that. Certainly then the number of times we go see them within the rules, and you start putting those together and you kind of feel if it's a push or a pull or is there a draw there. And because I think we work harder than most to create those numbers of exposures, we think our accuracy increases with number of exposures, to your point. And then there's some unique processes. If you go back to consider some of the ways we did things at Brigham Young University and some of the ways I chose to do it at Virginia with the inclusion of horses, there's experiential things that you can have in a short amount of time, almost like on a speed date, right? Where I learned, man, by having a young person that's never even seen a horse or experienced it hop on and watch them take on something new, watch the mom and dad, are they nervous, apprehensive, are they wanting a waiver, are they like, go for it? Just the family culture kind of comes out. And within a half hour's time, it's amazing what I can uncover by just being with young people doing something new. And so we try to create, to your point, not only touch points, the number, but the experiences within that are telling. Also, it's good for them to see me, right, or their coach in a different setting. And is that something they really want to be part of? Does that match? So, again, the number of touch points to your question, and then what type of touch points are we creating to add the most transparency?
Coach AJ Salves, 90 Sports Radio Network. You're going to see more and more that your closed-off spring access is becoming more common around the G5 era, or the G5 circle. Did it benefit you to do that at the end of the whole circle
Yeah.
season? Do you feel like it benefited you as much as you're hoping for, and would you do it again coming up next season?
Yeah, so now that, it's two things. So the first is, yes, it benefited us because we didn't lose a single player because no one saw him. And so, yeah, when you lose a player after spring practice, hard to replace them in the summer in a manner that to have enough touch points, and like it just feels really rushed. So most of the mistakes are made then. And we've added some, and so did everyone else. But yes, I thought it benefited us under the circumstances of 2 portal windows. Now there's only 1. And so really, I'm looking forward to more access to our program in the spring because there's no downside now in terms of players leaving, which was the motive, right? And so now that there's only 1 window, community engagement or possibly having additional opportunities for interaction with our team in the spring. There's also advantages to scrimmaging in front of people, especially with young players, rather than just their coaches. So I see that shifting now back maybe more toward a traditional model because there's only 1 portal window rather than 2.
And segue me to my next question, Coach. In your perfect world, without 1 portal order being removed, what would be the best way for college football to be able to continue their way in regards to transfer portal, recruiting, and that coaches aren't getting poached and tampering and such? In your perfect world, how would you like that schedule to be done? Or is there a perfect way?
I don't think there's a perfect way. I think one of the most challenging things that we just saw it play out again with the most successful coaches, and I've been in the exact seat and I've made the same choice, so I am not judging, just to be clear. But leaving a program that's having success prior to the bowl game or prior to the playoffs, it's hard on young people. And I love the NFL model of possibly for coaching changes, and it doesn't mean it's popular or even will happen. But what if, right? The coaching changes and administrators won't like it because they want recruiting happening as fast as possible and their programs getting up and running. But possibly, coaching and leadership changes can't happen until after the national championship game. And that way there's stability through, and possibly that means moving up the national championship game, which means we start earlier in July. I would rather do that and be done in 1 semester than have 2 semesters. So possibly when you can add a new head coach. Again, I already know the arguments and I've already heard the commentaries, so I presented this before. And then the 1 portal window, possibly shortly thereafter. And then they know who they're going to go to. It hasn't disrupted the players' lives as much that are on that team. There's a loyalty component where that coach can be with their team through their bowl game, right? And those are the ones that are most sought after. And again, I'm not judging. I've made the same decision. So, but you asked me about ideal timing. There's a way to possibly reduce that friction point. The NFL has already identified a way to do it. And college football is still somewhere wrestling between holding on to what is and what the new model is, and then how to adjust the timing, which this 1 portal window is the first step toward that. As we all know, that's a real significant challenge for Utah State and other early start schools. The portal opens on the 2nd. Our school starts on the 5th. We won't have transcripts evaluated or a chance for kids to visit and then classes start. And so our institution now is trying to decide how do we provide access to kids that will be arriving that late, going through that process, having them have a chance to visit, and classes are already going. And so the schools that are early start, like we are, they're all trying to mitigate that the best they can. And so, yes, I'm for 1 window. This time is as good as any, knowing it's after most of the games are being played. but it is college athletics, which is student athlete. And so there's a friction point, again, from the early start schools of making that happen at the highest level. And so I don't think there's a perfect answer. That's the best answer I can give right now.
Just coming into this program, almost exactly a year ago, that's kind of a disconnect between this whole cycle. Just what are the benefits that you've seen now coming into this cycle, having already this full year?
Yeah, I just refer to it as the discovery process. I know more about Utah State now, not everything. I know more about Cache Valley now, not everything. I know more about our competitors now, not everything. I know more about our own team now, not everything. So just the context in which we're framing all of our decisions is more accurate in relation to context and what we need. And so I just think we've been more thorough, we've been more accurate, we've been more intentional, we've had more time. And I think that'll manifest and show over time with the freshman class, which will be over time, it won't be immediate.
So I'd say a lot of the focus right now on this freshman class, but obviously it could be 1 or 2 years before a lot of these guys see meaningful snaps. What have you seen from last year's class now as they've been through a year and they're closer to contributing?
Yeah, of the players that we inherited and signed, the majority I'm really, really excited about. And we were looking for ways, probably from game 7 on, to integrate our freshmen more into special teams, et cetera, and then trying to preserve the redshirt balance, right, how many games they can play and et cetera. But I am encouraged, and our process and our program really filters the right kids in and the wrong ones out, but develops at a really high level, and I just watched our freshmen get better and better and better. And I think we did well in that first year process. I think we've added to that now, and so I'm really encouraged. Again, it won't be seen. You saw maybe Charger Doty out there in some subgroups toward the end, and that would just be one example, right? It's like that's a positive thing. I would see in the future, you're probably seeing a handful of freshmen, at the end of the season, preserving redshirt but playing. It's like you'd probably see more, and I don't know what that number is, but that usually starts to be reflected and manifest over time, and the succession planning. But really, the offensive line takes the longest, but man, it can have the most impact if you just are patient and let that thing return missionaries, younger, longer players with the right mindset. And so all of that's framed in a backdrop right now of college football that's not going to wait, just to be clear, right? So you have to have success, and you have to be winning, and you have to be moving the program forward and showing success. There's where the portal plays in. I don't want a program that's only based on one-year rosters. I want a program, and so that's why it's both approaches for me. So any other questions before Evan's probably sweating and nervous right now in front of the lights.
I just wanted to ask one about Caleb Maryland.
Yeah.
We're borderline world-class speed here. A 10-3,
Yes.
10-4, 100-meter runner here. How well do you feel he can acclimate in this offensive scheme with his dual threat capabilities?
It's why he's coming. And that's an oversimplification. So I'm not saying he doesn't care about Logan. I'm not saying he doesn't care about Utah State. And I'm not saying he doesn't care about our approach. He does about all those things. He's watched Bryson Barnes, and he's watched Kevin McGivern coach Bryson Barnes, and the innovation and the creation. And it's like, yeah, that's my spot. And so really excited about not only what he can bring, but if you've had a chance to watch Brady as well, our other freshman, man, really good young players at quarterback. And so I'm excited about them both. The speed component is because what you're asking about Caleb, that's fast. He's currently leading his high school team. They're deep in the playoffs in high-quality football in Texas, which reference points matter, not all the time in terms of context. If you think about, Trip Palmer, right, that's a different level of football than high-level Texas football, but yet I think he has a really bright future. So we're not opposed to looking at context, acknowledging it, but then looking at the individual within the context. So I'm excited about him, but I'm also excited about Brady.
Coach, it looks like 5 are going to be enrolling
Yes.
here in January. Just the value of having high school kids on campus that early to have so much more development ready for fall.
If I have my ideal selfishly, I would want every high school player to come in January. And then I have to say the next sentence, but they're a senior in high school, and what if they're a great baseball player? And what if they're a great basketball player? Or what if they're a wrestler? And what if, I don't know, spring is their prom? Or, I mean, all those things matter. But if you're now saying, what would be my ideal? For football specific and Utah State adjustment specific, I'd like as many here in January as I can get. So with that, I'm going to put a cut on me, and if you don't have questions, make them up for Evan just to season him a little bit. But I'm really appreciative. Evan's done a really nice job, and so I'm thankful for his help and his work, and the details of any other questions he'll be able to address more than I can. All right, thanks everybody. Okay, yep. Evan, I'm leaving.